The sound of metal clinking carried through a small garage at the edge of town. The place had seen better days, paint peeling on the doors, a leaky roof that gave Daniel headaches every time the rain lasted too long. But for him, it was more than a shop. It was the only way he kept food on the table, the only steady ground he and his daughter still had. Daniel leaned over the hood of an old pickup, sleeves rolled up, hands dark with grease. He was focused, steady, the kind of man who didn't waste words. In the corner, perched on an overturned milk crate, sat Lily. 7 years old, legs swinging back and forth as she gripped a crayon in her small hand. Her sketchbook lay open on her lap. She was drawing again, not trucks, not the tools scattered around her father, but a woman with wings and a glowing circle above her head. When Daniel glanced over, his chest tightened. He knew what she was drawing without asking. Lily had never known her mother, but she had pieced together an image in her mind, Mummy the Angel. "Look, Daddy," Lily said, holding the page up with a shy smile. "Do you think she looks real this time?" Daniel forced a smile, swallowing the ache in his throat. "She looks beautiful, sweetheart, just like always." The truth was harder. Every drawing reminded him of what was missing. And no matter how many engines he fixed, no matter how many hours he worked, that was the one thing he could never repair. Outside, gravel crunched beneath the weight of tyres. Daniel looked up, expecting a neighbour's rusted sedan or maybe a delivery truck. But instead, a sleek black car rolled to a stop just beyond the garage doors. He frowned. Cars like that didn't usually end up here. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. Her heels clicked against the ground, her coat sharp and pressed. She stood for a moment, taking in the cluttered space, the oil-stained floor, the man bent over an engine and the little girl with crayons at her feet. Her expression was quick, sharp, almost impatient. And yet something about the way she lingered at the doorway made Daniel pause. He set down his wrench, wiped his hands on a rag and stepped forward. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, a polished stranger standing at the edge of his worn-down world, was the start of something that would change both of their lives. Rebecca tightened her grip on the steering wheel as the dashboard lights of her sedan flickered. She had been rushing out of the city for a meeting she couldn't afford to miss, and the last thing she needed was car trouble. But halfway down the quiet road, the engine sputtered, coughed and gave out. With a frustrated sigh, she coasted the car to the side of the gravel road. The only sign of help nearby was an old garage with a hand-painted sign barely hanging straight. She considered calling roadside assistance, but when she glanced at her watch, she knew waiting for a tow truck would take too long. Reluctantly, she pulled in. The garage looked even smaller up close. Faded walls, rusted tools, and a smell of motor oil in the air. It was nothing like the sleek service centres she was used to. For a second, she thought about backing out, but then her car let out one last groan, as if reminding her she didn't have a choice. She pushed open the door, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. Inside, a man looked up from under the hood of an old pickup. He had broad shoulders, grease on his hands, and a calmness about him that didn't match her urgency. "My car just died out there," she said quickly, pointing toward the sedan. Her voice carried more edge than she intended. "I need it looked at right away, I can't be late." Daniel wiped his hands with a rag and gave a small nod. "Let's see what we're working with," he said, steady and unbothered. From the corner, Lily peeked out from behind a stack of boxes, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. She studied the stranger with wide eyes. Rebecca's gaze followed, her brow furrowing. "She's here? In a place like this?" Daniel's voice firmed, though he stayed polite. "That's my daughter. She spends the afternoons with me, safer here than anywhere else." Rebecca didn't answer. She glanced around at the clutter, the mismatched tools, the folding chair by the wall. Every part of her wanted to question if this man could really fix her car, but something about the steadiness in his tone made her hold back. Daniel walked past her, heading straight for the sedan without another word. He popped the hood, leaning in with practiced ease. His quiet focus contrasted sharply with her impatience, and for reasons she couldn't explain, it unsettled her. Behind them, the faint sound of crayon scratching filled the silence. Rebecca's eyes drifted toward the little girl again. For a moment, her sharp expression softened before she looked away quickly, as if catching herself. Daniel's voice broke the stillness. "It's nothing too serious. Give me some time and you'll be back on the road." Rebecca crossed her arms, exhaling slowly. She didn't know why, but for the first time all day she wasn't checking her watch. The garage was quiet except for the low hum of Daniel working under the hood of Rebecca's car. She stood nearby, arms crossed, tapping her finger against her sleeve, her polished world colliding with the grit of this place. In the corner, Lily tried not to stare, though her curiosity got the better of her. She peeked at Rebecca again and again, stealing little glances while pretending to colour. To her, the woman looked like she had stepped out of one of her storybooks, elegant, sharp, almost untouchable. Wanting to be brave, Lily shifted forward, hugging her sketchbook closer to her chest. But as she did, her elbow brushed the edge of the box beside her. The book slipped from her hands, hit the concrete floor, and fanned open across the oil-stained ground. Rebecca bent down quickly, almost out of reflex, reaching it before Lily could. She meant to close it right away and hand it back, but her eyes caught on the page that lay open. A crayon drawing of a woman. Gentle smile, long hair, a halo drawn with shaky yellow lines. At the top, in careful block letters only a child could make, were the words Mummy Angel. Rebecca froze. Her breath hitched, caught somewhere in her throat. For a moment, the garage disappeared. All she saw was the drawing, and all she heard was the echo of a laugh she thought she'd never hear again. Lily's small voice broke through the silence. "That's my mum," she said softly, eyes wide but trusting. "I don't remember her, so I draw her like this. Daddy says she's watching over us." Rebecca's hand trembled slightly as she closed the book and held it out. Her face, always controlled, betrayed something raw, grief that slipped through before she could hide it. Daniel looked up from the car, sensing the sudden stillness. He glanced from his daughter to Rebecca, but said nothing. He knew Lily's drawings had a way of breaking people open, even strangers. Rebecca straightened quickly, clearing her throat, forcing her expression back into something cool. "Careful with your things," she muttered, handing the sketchbook back. But as Lily hugged it to her chest, Rebecca turned away. Her polished mask cracked just enough for Daniel to notice. For the first time since she had walked in, the woman looked less like someone in control of everything, and more like someone carrying something she couldn't put down. That evening, Rebecca's apartment glowed with the cold light of the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out across the skyline, but she barely noticed. She tossed her keys on the counter and slipped out of her heels, yet the tightness in her chest wouldn't ease. She poured herself a glass of water and sat on the edge of the couch. Her mind wasn't on the meeting she had missed or the stack of emails waiting for her. It was on the sketchbook, on the little girl in that run-down garage, on the crayon angel with the word Mummy scratched in uneven letters. She stood slowly, drawn toward the bookshelf in the corner. Behind rows of leather-bound reports and plaques from her career, hidden where she rarely looked, was a small silver frame. Rebecca pulled it out with careful hands. The photo inside was of a girl no older than Lily. Blonde curls, a smile that filled the whole frame. Her daughter. Gone too soon. Rebecca sat down heavily, clutching the frame to her chest. The apartment, so sleek and polished, suddenly felt suffocating. She remembered hospital rooms, whispered promises, and a laugh that faded before its time. After her daughter was gone, Rebecca had built walls out of work and silence, convincing herself she was moving forward. But today, in that small garage, a child's drawing had broken through in an instant. Her eyes stung. She whispered her daughter's name, the sound trembling in the empty room. No answer came, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator. She wiped at her face quickly, unwilling to let the tears linger. Setting the frame back on the shelf, she straightened it, then stepped away, but her eyes kept drifting back. On the dining table, a stack of unopened envelopes caught her attention. One was a flyer for a neighbourhood fundraiser at the local school, printed with bright colours and children's doodles. She picked it up, staring at the childish sun drawn in the corner. For a moment, she saw Lily's smile again, the way the girl's eyes lit up when she talked about her drawings. Rebecca folded the flyer in half and set it in her purse without thinking. She didn't know why. All she knew was the garage, the mechanic, and that little girl had left a mark, and she wasn't sure she wanted to ignore it. 2 days passed. Daniel kept his head down, fixing cars, pretending not to notice the landlord's threats hanging over him like storm clouds. Lily stayed close by as always, crayons in hand, sketching with the new pencils Rebecca had given her. Every so often she'd ask about the woman, her innocent curiosity impossible to ignore. "Do you think she'll come back, Daddy?" Lily asked once, eyes hopeful. Daniel only shrugged, keeping his tone even. "People like her don't usually stick around here, kiddo. Don't count on it." But he was wrong. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low, the sleek black car rolled up again. Daniel blinked in surprise when Rebecca stepped out, not in heels this time, but in simple flats, her coat draped casually over her arm. She carried a small paper bag. "I thought you might be here," she said almost awkwardly, as if unsure how to explain herself. "I was running errands and, well, I passed by an art supply shop." She held out the bag. Inside was a sketch pad thicker than Lily's old one, and a box of coloured pencils in shades brighter than the first set. "I thought she might like these." Lily gasped, rushing over. "For me?" Rebecca knelt, her eyes softening. "Yes, I figured your angels deserve more colours." Lily's grin spread wide, lighting up the dim garage. She hugged the sketch pad to her chest. "Thank you. I'm going to draw the biggest angel ever." Daniel watched quietly, torn between gratitude and suspicion. Gifts weren't common here. People didn't go out of their way for him, let alone his daughter. He studied Rebecca for a long moment, but her expression wasn't one of pity. It was something deeper, the look of someone remembering, someone carrying her own ghosts. Rebecca stood, brushing invisible dust from her coat. "It's nothing," she said quickly, though her voice carried a weight beneath the words. She turned toward her car, but before she could leave, Lily's small voice stopped her. "Will you come back again to see my drawing?" Rebecca froze. Slowly she turned, meeting the child's hopeful eyes. For the briefest moment, the polished mask she always wore slipped away. She gave a small, real smile. "Maybe I will." Daniel said nothing, only watched as she drove off. But the question lingered in his mind long after the taillights disappeared into the evening. Why would a stranger care this much? The following week started like any other. Daniel was elbow-deep in the engine of a pickup, sweat on his brow, while Lily hummed softly, colouring with her new pencils. For a brief moment, life felt almost normal again, but normal never lasted long. The crunch of tyres on gravel made Daniel glance up. A dark sedan pulled in. Not a customer's car, but one he recognised immediately. Mr. Halpern, the man who owned the strip of land where the garage stood, stepped out. He smoothed down his suit jacket, his polished shoes looking out of place against the oil-stained ground. Daniel set down his wrench, jaw tightening. "Afternoon, Halpern, what brings you here?" Halpern looked around with a thin smile, as if the garage were already gone. "I'll keep it short. The developer I mentioned last month finally signed the papers. They want this block for a new shopping centre I've agreed to sell, which means you'll need to be out by the end of the month." Daniel's stomach dropped. He had heard rumours, but he hadn't believed they would move this fast. "We had an agreement," he said, voice steady but tense. "I've paid rent on time, every month for years." Halpern shrugged. "Business is business. They're offering me 3 times what you pay. I'm not running a charity, Daniel." Behind them, Lily looked up from her drawing, sensing the sharpness in her father's tone. "Daddy?" Daniel forced a calm smile for her. "It's okay, sweetheart. Keep colouring." Then he turned back, eyes narrowing. "You could have given me more notice." Halpern sighed, already stepping toward his car. "I did. Consider this your notice. End of the month. I'll expect the keys." The sedan rolled away, leaving only the echo of its engine and the taste of dust in the air. Daniel stood still, rag clenched in his hand. He looked around at the garage, the tools he had collected over years, the trucks that neighbours trusted him with, the corner where Lily sat drawing like it was her second home. It wasn't just a shop, it was their life. He walked over to his daughter, crouching down beside her. She was drawing their garage again, with smoke curling from the roof and 2 stick figures standing out front. She held it up proudly. "See, Daddy, it's us." Daniel managed to smile, but his chest burned. He wondered how much longer this picture could stay true. It started with a cough. At first, Daniel thought nothing of it. Kids caught colds all the time. But by evening, Lily's small frame shivered under a blanket on the couch, her cheeks flushed, her forehead burning hot. "Daddy, I don't feel good," she whispered, her voice weak. Daniel pressed a hand to her skin and felt the fever climb higher. Panic rose in his chest. He bundled her in his jacket, scooped her into his arms, and drove through the night toward the nearest hospital. The emergency room buzzed with noise, phones ringing, voices echoing, carts rattling down the hall. Nurses whisked Lily away for tests while Daniel filled out forms with shaking hands. His calloused fingers, so sure around tools, fumbled over simple boxes on a clipboard. Hours dragged. Finally, a doctor explained that Lily had an infection. "She'll need antibiotics and to stay overnight," he said gently. "She should be okay, but we'll monitor her closely." Relief hit Daniel, but it tangled with dread. Another hospital bill, another mountain he didn't know how to climb. He sank into a plastic chair by her bed, holding her small hand, exhaustion settling into his bones. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "Daniel?" He turned, startled. Rebecca stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. She wasn't in her sharp business clothes tonight. She wore a plain coat, her hair loose, her face unguarded. I didn't expect to see you here," Daniel said, confusion in his tone. Rebecca stepped closer. "One of the nurses is a family friend. She called me earlier about a little girl who came in, drawing angels even with a fever. I knew it had to be Lily. I had to check on her." Daniel blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know," Rebecca said softly, her eyes fixed on the small figure sleeping under the hospital blanket. "But I wanted to." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the steady beep of the monitor. Daniel looked at his daughter, then back at Rebecca. For the first time, he didn't see a stranger who didn't belong in their world. He saw someone who cared enough to show up. Rebecca's voice broke the quiet. "She looks so small in that bed." Daniel swallowed hard, his voice rough. "She's tougher than she looks. But I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Every time something like this happens, I wonder how I'm going to make it through." Rebecca hesitated, then sat down in the chair across from him. "You don't have to go through it alone." Daniel studied her face, searching for pity, but what he found instead was something else. Sincerity. In that sterile hospital room with his daughter between them, the wall he had built to keep people out began to crack. The hospital room had grown quiet after the long night. Machines hummed softly, and Lily slept soundly for the first time in hours, her small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Daniel sat slouched in a chair by her bed, his head tipped back against the wall, eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had spent the night awake, watching over her, afraid to close his eyes. When the door creaked open, he lifted his head. Rebecca stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him without a word. "Thanks," Daniel muttered, his voice rough. Rebecca sat in the chair across from him, her eyes drifting toward Lily. "She's a fighter," she said softly. Daniel gave a faint smile. "Yeah, stronger than I'll ever be." He rubbed his face, the weight of everything pressing down. "But these nights," his voice trailed off. "I don't know how much longer I can keep it together." Rebecca hesitated before speaking, as if carefully choosing her words. "Daniel, I know it's not my place, but I've been thinking. I have a friend who owns a larger auto shop in the city. He's been searching for someone steady, someone who actually cares about the work. You'd be perfect for it." Daniel stiffened, sitting up straighter. "A job in the city?" She nodded. "It comes with real pay, health insurance, stability. You wouldn't have to face nights like this wondering how to pay the bill." Daniel shook his head slowly. "That garage, it's all I have left. It's where Lily grew up, it's our home." Rebecca's gaze softened, but her voice held steady. "I understand, but the landlord isn't going to change his mind. You're fighting to hold on to something that's already slipping away. Maybe it's time to fight for something new, for her." She tilted her head toward Lily. For the chance to give her more than survival. Daniel looked down at his daughter's hand, so small in his own. His pride screamed at him to say no, to prove he could do it alone. But the father in him, the man who had just spent the night helpless in a plastic chair, knew Rebecca was right. He exhaled slowly. "I don't want to uproot her life, her school, her friends. She's used to things the way they are." Rebecca leaned forward. "Children don't need everything to stay the same. They need someone to show up, someone steady, someone who loves them. And you already do that, Daniel. This would just give you the tools to keep doing it without breaking yourself in the process." The room went quiet again. Daniel stared at the floor, his jaw tight, torn between pride and the undeniable truth of her words. Rebecca didn't press further. She simply said, "Think about it," before settling back into her chair, her eyes never leaving Lily's peaceful face. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt the weight on his shoulders shift. Not gone, but lighter, as if someone else was finally willing to carry a piece of it with him. Daniel hadn't given Rebecca an answer. Days passed, and the offer she had left hanging in that hospital room weighed on him heavier than the tools in his garage. He wanted to believe she meant it, that she wasn't just another outsider swooping in to fix a problem she didn't understand. But the fear that she would eventually walk away, leaving Lily with yet another hole in her heart, gnawed at him. Saturday came with crisp air and the buzz of excitement around town. The schoolyard was alive with the fall festival. Food stalls, music, and children racing through the grass with painted faces. Daniel stood beside Lily at her art booth, watching her tape up a drawing she had worked on all week. It was their garage again, with its crooked roof and smoke curling from the chimney. Daniel smiled until he noticed something different. Next to the stick figure of him and the small figure of her, Lily had drawn a taller woman with long hair, standing close, her hand holding theirs. Daniel's chest tightened. "And who's this?" he asked gently. Lily's grin was wide. "That's Miss Rebecca. She gave me these pencils, so I drew her with us." Before Daniel could respond, a voice spoke from behind him. "She made me taller than I am." He turned. Rebecca stood there, dressed simply in a sweater and jeans, no heels, no sharp edges. In her hands were 2 paper cups of hot cocoa. She offered one to Daniel and handed the other to Lily, who accepted it with delight. "You're here," Daniel said, unable to hide his surprise. "I had a meeting today," Rebecca admitted, her voice easy, almost casual. "A client I should have seen hours ago, but when I remembered Lily's festival, I cancelled it." She glanced toward the drawing taped on the board, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Seemed like there were more important places to be. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "You cancelled work for this?" Rebecca met his eyes, unflinching. "Yes, because showing up matters, and she deserves people who show up." Lily tugged Rebecca's sleeve, pulling her toward the table, eager to show her every picture she had drawn. Rebecca knelt beside her, listening intently, laughing softly, letting herself be pulled into the small world Lily had created. Daniel watched, something shifting inside him. For the first time, he didn't see a polished stranger from another life. He saw a woman choosing to be here with them in this noisy schoolyard, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And in that moment, Daniel realised what words couldn't say. Rebecca wasn't just offering help, she was offering presence. The weeks that followed felt different. The landlord's notice still weighed on Daniel, but for the first time, he didn't feel like he was standing alone in the fight. Rebecca kept showing up. Sometimes with dinner in a paper bag, sometimes with nothing more than her time, sitting at the little table with Lily, listening to her chatter, laughing at her wild stories. One chilly evening, Daniel invited her to stay for supper. His kitchen was nothing special, just a scarred wooden table, 2 mismatched chairs, and Lily's crayons scattered across the surface. But Lily insisted they make it nice. She folded napkins into triangles and placed a stub of a candle in the centre. Daniel served what he could, a pot of stew, steaming but simple. He set the bowls down, a little sheepish. "Not exactly fine dining," he said. Rebecca smiled softly. "It's perfect." They ate together, the warmth of the food filling the small room. Lily, restless as always, began sketching again, tongue pressed between her teeth as she worked. When she was finished, she pushed the paper across the table with both hands. "Look," she said proudly. On the page was a drawing of their little kitchen, the candle glowing bright. 3 figures sat side by side. Daniel recognised himself by the messy hair Lily always exaggerated. Next to him was Lily, her smile stretched ear to ear. And on the other side was Rebecca, drawn with long hair and a soft curve of a smile. Above them, instead of the angel halo Lily always used to draw, she had sketched a big sun, its rays spreading across the page. Daniel stared at it, his throat tightening. He looked from the picture to his daughter, then to Rebecca, She blinked, quickly wiping at her eyes, but she didn't hide the smile that followed. "This is our family now," Lily said, her voice simple and sure. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the faint crackle of the candle. Then Daniel reached out, placing his hand gently over Lily's, and then, after a pause, over Rebecca's. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet acknowledgement that somehow, without planning it, without forcing it, they had built something together. Rebecca squeezed his hand back. Her smile was small, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt what he thought he'd lost forever: home. Every story leaves us with a quiet reminder. This one shows us that family isn't always defined by blood or by perfect beginnings. Sometimes it's built in small, ordinary moments, in laughter around a worn kitchen table, in showing up when it matters, in holding each other through storms. Daniel thought he had to carry the weight alone. Rebecca believed her heart had no room left. But together, they discovered something timeless. Hope has a way of returning when we least expect it, often in the form of people who choose to stay. So here's a question for you. Do you believe that family is something we're born into, or something we can build along the way? Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of those you love, and we'll see you again on Rain Inside.